Welcome back to Responding to Human Trafficking for Pregnancy Resource Centers. This is Module 6, and today we're going to look at mechanisms of control and barriers to freedom. After completing this module, you'll be able to differentiate between pimp control and gang control, describe how gangs control through unmet needs, understand children and pregnancy as controlling factors, describe barriers that victims may face, and identify roles involved in combating human trafficking. Victims of human trafficking are typically like the proverbial frog in the pot. If you put a frog directly in boiling water, they'll jump out. But if the water is cool and slowly heated, they acclimate and normalize. Traffickers may move fast or slow. In America, it's often likely that they'll use manipulative tactics to control their victims. After all, we pride ourselves on being the home of the free. Control by a pimp may be violent, but it's very likely to be psychological, circumstantial, and financial. Control by gangs is more like familial trafficking, with emotional trauma bonding and fear of violence, including death. The majority of those exploited for sex report the core violation of child sexual abuse. This is a correlation, not causation, but it does indicate a substantial factor to be considered. Teaching children that they must always unquestionably obey every adult may not be the best thing to do. Girls and boys are abused at an alarming rate. Breaking the cycle of abuse is crucial. Although adults are enticed into trafficking situations, many victims are children and youth. Their brains are still developing, making them especially vulnerable to trauma bonding and manipulation. Module 5 discusses the archetypes of traffickers and common tactics associated with each one. Pimps may use drugs to control their victims by introducing them casually or by force. Recall that gorilla pimps use violence to control, Romeo pimps pretend to be in love, finesse pimps manipulate and play head games, and daddy pimps use the pretense of family duty to force prostitution. They may require full accounting of every penny. If trafficking is familial, victims may not realize it's not normal. The unspoken, intense betrayal and trauma bonding controls behavior. Pimps consider themselves businessmen. They have a mindset that the victims are property to be maintained only to the degree necessary to carry out the business. Trafficking victims are viewed similarly to that of livestock of a farmer. Some pimps may have a great regard and compassion, even genuinely believing they care in a broken sort of way. Others will be heartless and will control victims without regard to their personhood. Pimps are people too, and may have suffered earlier trauma themselves. They have complex relationships and many factors that drove them to such depravity. We must remember the human condition and that we are all in need of the Savior. The bonds of the group are strong motivators for gang members. Their sense of belonging is key to survival in the gang. As noted in Module 4, gang members blood in and blood out. It's a heavy responsibility for life. A member's physical needs are part of the control used by leadership of the gang. The material possessions and food, clothing, sleep, etc. may be completely dictated by the leader of the set. Even safety in the area is expected to be in the control of leadership. After initiation to the gang, safety, love, and belonging, although we might believe it to be entrapment, become part of the member's identity. The member becomes part of the collective. Let's look at this according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. According to Maslow, our needs are met in order. First, physiological, air, food, water, health, then safety, shelter, stability, love and belonging or inclusion, social esteem, power, control, recognition, and self-actualization, creativity, and growth. Gangs may meet these needs because food and health needs may be unmet by family. In areas with gang activity, threats of violence and danger are everywhere. Humans are created for connection, so being an outcast is very painful. Feeling out of control and invisible can create strong desire for power. Each of us strives for this in our own way, through our own experiences and abilities. At great cost, these needs are met by the gang. After initiation, members swear to protect one another as long as it serves the whole. The gang's culture dictates that belonging comes by self-sacrifice and unquestioning service. Terms like queen and homie can appear to meet this need. loyalty is rewarded with leadership status. There's a solid hierarchy of rank to aspire to. For example, soldiers who serve prison time are often revered. In gang hierarchy, the level of power decreases, but the bonds seldom do, if needs are being met. Hardcore members control a number of sets. Associates may have various powers. The clique's banded leadership may be considered renegade, as this outer group is often loosely controlled. The wannabes and fringe aren't loyal members, but may be involved in crimes or connected by family. Gang-controlled traffickers find their victims the same way as pimps might. Their mode of control may be just as profound, but their goals are different. They may be business-minded, but the goals of continuity within the whole gang are more pressing. With the emphasis on territory, a gang might only prostitute a member within a certain area, or they might transfer them to serve distant members of the gang. The diversity of criminal activity may be another means of control. The fear of prison is a strong silencer for both gangs and pimps. Gang members are particularly adept at organization and promotion. Power and control of a physical area or a group of people within that area is the essence of a gang. The colors of the gang can be seen in the street art or graffiti that often marks the perimeter of the territory. The hitting up of an area lets all the gang's members know where their limits are. This is also a way to control victims geographically. Victims are conditioned to stay within the bounds that may seem to be impenetrable. The colors or insignia of the members appear everywhere they might go, creating the impression that the gang is absolutely inescapable. We have discussed trauma bonds and the risk factors of lack of financial, familial, and social resources, including education, identification, and the like. These create barriers to freedom. Victims face both tangible and intangible barriers. Of the tangible barriers, trafficking victims may not have any belongings, a job, or any other way of supporting themselves. Of the intangible, they may not believe that they have any valuable skills, and they could be right. When I got out of the life, I had nothing. But as long as we're breathing, there's hope. We can always learn new skills. Mental and emotional barriers are debilitating. A victim might suffer from mental ill health or substance dependency. She may have been told that she's unworthy of help from anyone else. She may even believe that she would be jailed if she exposed what's happening. Whether labor or sex trafficking, she may be engaging in illicit activity. The trafficker will work hard to brainwash her. If she is a foreign national, undocumented, or non-English speaking, she may not know that she has rights here in the U.S. She may be perfectly able to communicate, but fear of her trafficker will keep her from making a report. The trafficker might even chip her like an animal, so that if she runs, he will find her. The fear of repercussion is often well-founded. Guilt can also be a problem. She may have agreed to the situation in the beginning. Believing it's her fault that she's in the situation may cause her to relinquish any hope of getting out. This isn't unusual, especially if she's left before and gone back. Recidivism is very common. Because she's learned to cope with the turmoil and abuse, there's also a neurochemical component to manage within her. Her mind is like a swirling soup of stress chemicals that she's learned to regulate and normalize over time so that her situation becomes almost comfortable. At least it's less frightening than the unknown. There may be a number of legal barriers she's facing. One could be her age. If she's a minor, in foster care or a familial trafficking situation, her abusers are her legal guardians. Or she could be legally married to her trafficker. She may have been arrested and have a record. Depending on the charges, she may not be able to get housing, a job, or loans. If she's on probation or has gaps in her school or work history, that may cause problems as well. She may also be held hostage by the trafficker who has evidence of her criminal activity. If she has children with her trafficker, the barriers are multiplied. Housing, food, clothing, and other needs are now required for more than one person. The child or children may also be used as hostages. Being able to offer her housing becomes more complicated, but not impossible. Your center should have a list of shelters and housing options for such situations. She may have disabilities, or she may see her pregnancy as a reason to stay. Biological bonds are very strong in many cultures. Conversely, a baby might be enough reason for some victims to get free. In my case, saving my baby saved my life. For gang members, death is the only way out. At least that's what they think. To escape a gang is very difficult and requires a great many resources, but it has been done successfully. The complexity of our online, GPS-enabled, facial recognition-savvy society erects real barriers, but they're not insurmountable. Your state's gang or trafficking task force may be able to help. There are government and non-governmental agencies dedicated to caring for victims of human trafficking. Safety for you and your staff, as well as the victim, is paramount. Do not attempt to confront a suspected trafficker directly or alert a victim who's in denial to any suspicions. An anonymous tip line is available at 888-3737-888 and 866-374-2423. It is the role of law enforcement to investigate suspected cases of human trafficking. As stated in Module 1 of this course, the U.S. government defines human trafficking as sex trafficking in which a commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained 18 years of age, and the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of subjection to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. Everyone who plays a role in trafficking could be charged. For example, if they harbor a victim, are a buyer, are knowingly a facilitator, or are a handler, meaning someone who controls the victim but is controlled by the trafficker. The determination of their role is not up to us. It's up to law enforcement. The role we play is that of the Good Samaritan. This course will help you identify victims, but you are bound to offering help and compassion, not rescue. In cases of child abuse of any kind, however, everyone is a mandatory reporter. Reporting will be covered in detail in Module 9.